You might think you resist change because you're lazy, unmotivated, or undisciplined, but that explanation is not only incorrect, it's misleading, because the truth is far more precise and far more interesting. Your brain is not trying to stop you. It is trying to protect you. And sometimes protection looks exactly like resistance. You can want something deeply, understand it clearly, and still feel an invisible force holding you back the moment you try to move. That force is not weakness. It is a built-in safety system that has existed inside human minds for thousands of years. The strange part is this: the more important something is, the more likely your brain is to slow you down before you begin. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it is designed to pause before risk. And once you understand how that system actually works, something changes. Not in your motivation, not in your discipline, but in your interpretation of what resistance really is. Most people believe progress should feel natural when something is good for them. They assume that if a habit is helpful, the mind should welcome it. But the brain does not measure what is helpful. It measures what is safe. Those two things are not the same. Safety is immediate. Helpfulness is long-term. The brain always prioritizes immediate signals over distant ones, because it evolved in environments where immediate danger mattered more than future benefit. That means the mind treats unfamiliar improvement the same way it treats possible threat, cautiously. When something is new, uncertain, or unpredictable, the brain does not celebrate it. It evaluates it. That evaluation process often feels like hesitation, doubt, or resistance. But those feelings are not decisions. They are assessments. And assessments happen automatically, long before you consciously decide whether something is good for you or not. Inside your mind exists a constant monitoring process. It scans for changes, differences, and unknown outcomes. This system runs quietly in the background, comparing what is happening now with what has happened before. If something matches past experience, it is labeled safe. If something is unfamiliar, it is labeled uncertain. Uncertainty is not treated as danger, but it is treated as something that must be slowed down. Slowing down is the brain's default response to uncertainty. That slowdown can feel like hesitation, distraction, or sudden tiredness. Many people interpret these sensations as lack of motivation. In reality, they are caution signals. The brain is asking a single silent question: is this safe enough to continue? Until it receives enough evidence, it keeps the brakes slightly engaged. Not to stop you permanently, but to prevent you from moving too fast into something it has not yet learned to trust. Understanding something logically does not automatically change how the brain responds emotionally. Logic operates in conscious thought. Protection operates in automatic systems. Automatic systems react faster than conscious reasoning because they are designed to act before analysis is complete. This is why you can fully understand that something would benefit you and still feel resistance toward doing it. Your reasoning mind may approve, but your protective system has not yet updated its safety prediction. That update only happens through repeated exposure, not through explanation. The brain does not trust words. It trusts patterns. Until a new experience happens enough times without harm, it remains categorized as uncertain. And uncertainty always slows action. So when someone says, "I know this would help me, but I still don't do it," what they are actually describing is a delay between understanding and neural confirmation. The mind has heard the argument, but it has not yet seen the proof. Resistance often disguises itself as tiredness. You may notice that the moment you decide to begin something unfamiliar, your energy suddenly drops. This can feel like genuine exhaustion, but in many cases it is not physical fatigue. It is neurological conservation. The brain reduces available energy when it detects uncertainty because unfamiliar actions require more processing power. Predictable actions are efficient. New ones are expensive. The mind treats effort like a limited resource, and it allocates that resource carefully. When something is known, it releases energy freely. When something is unknown, it releases energy slowly. That difference creates the sensation that starting is harder than continuing. Once an activity becomes familiar, the brain stops restricting energy and the task feels easier. But before that familiarity forms, the protective system keeps output low, not to stop you, but to observe what happens first. Strangely, the more meaningful something is, the more resistance you may feel toward it. This is not coincidence. Importance increases perceived risk. When something matters deeply, the brain assigns it higher emotional weight. Higher emotional weight means higher perceived consequence if something goes wrong. Even positive opportunities can trigger this response. A new project, a new direction, or a new commitment can feel heavier than routine tasks because the mind recognizes that the outcome could matter. When stakes feel high, the protective system increases caution. That increased caution can feel like procrastination or avoidance, but its purpose is delay, not denial. The brain is essentially saying, "This matters. Move carefully." What people often misinterpret as self-sabotage is actually self-protection. The system is not trying to block progress. It is trying to prevent sudden mistakes in situations that feel significant. Importance does not remove resistance. It often amplifies it. The brain prefers what it has already experienced, even if that experience is not ideal. Familiarity creates predictability, and predictability creates a sense of safety. This means the mind will often choose a known discomfort over an unknown improvement. That choice is not irrational from the brain's perspective. Known situations come with stored data. Unknown situations do not. When something is familiar, the brain can predict what will happen next. When something is new, it cannot. Prediction is one of the brain's main goals, because prediction reduces surprise, and surprise requires rapid adjustment. Adjustment costs energy and attention, so the mind develops a quiet preference for environments it already understands. That preference can make change feel unnatural, even when change is beneficial. The resistance is not about whether something is good. It is about whether something is predictable, and predictability to the brain is a form of safety. When the brain encounters something unfamiliar, it rarely says no immediately. Instead, it delays. Delay is one of the most common protective responses in human behavior. It feels subtle, almost invisible, because it does not look dramatic. It looks like waiting for the right time, the right mood, or the right moment. But underneath that waiting is a neurological process measuring possible outcomes. The brain is gathering information before allowing full engagement. This delay is not a flaw. It is a filter. The mind is designed to pause before committing to actions it does not yet understand. That pause can last seconds, minutes, or sometimes much longer depending on how uncertain something feels. The more unfamiliar the situation appears, the longer the pause tends to be. What feels like hesitation is often simply the brain asking for more evidence before it proceeds. Many people notice that beginning something feels far harder than continuing it. This pattern is not motivational. It is neurological. Starting requires the brain to shift from prediction to exploration. Prediction uses stored information. Exploration requires new processing. New processing demands more energy, more attention, and more monitoring. Because of that, the brain treats beginnings as high-effort moments. Once an activity is started and no immediate threat appears, the protective system gradually relaxes. As it relaxes, energy becomes more available, and the task begins to feel easier. This is why momentum can feel powerful. Momentum is not just psychological, it is physiological. It reflects the brain lowering its guard after confirming that the situation is stable. The difficulty at the beginning is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that the mind is transitioning from caution to participation. Uncertainty produces a specific internal signal. It often appears as doubt. Doubt is not the opposite of confidence. It is the brain's request for more information. When the mind lacks enough data to predict an outcome, it generates doubt as a temporary placeholder. This feeling encourages observation before action. The brain prefers observation because observation reduces unknowns. Each piece of new information lowers uncertainty slightly. As uncertainty decreases, resistance decreases as well. This is why experiences often feel easier the second time than the first. The brain is no longer entering a completely unknown situation. It has at least some stored reference. That reference makes prediction easier, and easier prediction reduces caution. Doubt, therefore, is not a stop sign. It is a measuring tool. It tells you that the brain is still calculating what it does not yet know. Sometimes people feel two opposite impulses at the same time. One part wants to move forward, another part wants to stay still. This can feel confusing, as if the mind is contradicting itself, but internally, this is simply two systems operating simultaneously. The reasoning system evaluates possibilities and sees potential benefits. The protective system evaluates uncertainty and sees possible risk. Both systems are doing their jobs correctly. The tension between them is not dysfunction, it is balance. Progress requires openness. Safety requires caution. The brain maintains both because relying on only one would be dangerous. A mind that only seeks safety would never explore. A mind that only seeks progress would ignore risk. The feeling of internal conflict is evidence that both systems are active. It does not mean something is wrong. It means your brain is weighing options carefully before choosing a direction. Resistance often feels like it is coming from you, as if it reflects your character or personality. But most resistance is not personal at all. It is mechanical. The brain runs automatic processes constantly, and many of them operate below awareness. When a protective response activates, it can create sensations such as hesitation, tension, or reluctance. Because these sensations happen inside your experience, they can feel like they define you. In reality, they are temporary states, not personal traits. The mind produces them for a reason, to slow situations it has not yet evaluated. If those sensations lasted forever, they might define you, but they rarely do. They appear when uncertainty appears, and they fade when familiarity grows. This pattern shows that resistance is not identity, it is timing. It arrives at the beginning of unfamiliar experiences and gradually leaves once the brain decides the situation is safe enough to continue. Resistance often feels like it is coming from you, as if it reflects your character or personality. But most resistance is not personal at all. It is mechanical. The brain runs automatic processes constantly, and many of them operate below awareness. When a protective response activates, it can create sensations such as hesitation, tension, or reluctance. Because these sensations happen inside your experience, they can feel like they define you. In reality, they are temporary states, not personal traits. The mind produces them for a reason, to slow situations it has not yet evaluated. If those sensations lasted forever, they might define you, but they rarely do. They appear when uncertainty appears, and they fade when familiarity grows. This pattern shows that resistance is not identity, it is timing. It arrives at the beginning of unfamiliar experiences and gradually leaves once the brain decides the situation is safe enough to continue. Before fully accepting something new, the brain often runs small tests. These tests may be so subtle you barely notice them. You might engage briefly, then step back, try something once, then hesitate the next time. These small trials allow the mind to gather data without committing completely. Partial engagement feels safer than full immersion because it limits potential consequences. The brain uses these cautious experiments to update its predictions. Each test answers a quiet question: what happens if I do this? If the result is neutral or positive, the brain stores that information. Stored information reduces uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty reduces resistance. Over time, Enough small tests can convince the protective system that something unfamiliar is actually safe. But until those tests occur, the mind keeps its guard partially raised, not as an obstacle, but as a precaution. One of the most common misunderstandings people have is assuming that resistance means something is wrong. They feel hesitation and conclude they should stop. But hesitation does not mean stop. It means evaluate. The brain produces hesitation specifically to create space for observation. If hesitation meant danger, it would feel urgent. Instead, it usually feels slow. That slowness is intentional. It gives your mind time to collect information before moving forward. Misinterpreting hesitation as failure can lead people to abandon things prematurely. In reality, hesitation is often a sign that the brain is working exactly as it should. It is checking conditions, comparing possibilities, and measuring outcomes. The presence of resistance does not indicate inability. It indicates analysis. When understood correctly, resistance stops looking like an enemy and starts looking like a signal that your brain is paying attention. The brain constantly manages energy, even when you are not aware of it. Every thought, action, and decision requires fuel. Because energy is limited, the mind naturally tries to conserve it whenever possible. This is why familiar routines feel easy and unfamiliar tasks feel heavy. Familiar actions use established neural pathways, which require less effort to activate. New actions require building or strengthening pathways, which costs more energy. From the brain's perspective, conserving energy is efficient and safe. Spending energy is only justified when necessary. So when something new appears, the brain evaluates whether the energy cost is worth it. If it is not convinced it slows you down, that slowing down is not laziness, it is resource management. The mind is deciding whether the investment is justified before it spends its reserves. Above all else, the brain prioritizes safety. This priority developed long before modern life existed. In earlier environments, reacting cautiously increased survival. That same system still operates today, even though many situations are no longer dangerous. The mind does not distinguish perfectly between physical risk and uncertainty. Both can trigger similar protective responses. So when you encounter something unfamiliar, your brain may react as if caution is required, even if no real threat exists. This reaction is automatic. It happens faster than conscious thought. The protective system activates first, and reasoning evaluates later. That order is intentional. Quick caution has historically been safer than quick trust. What feels like resistance is often simply the brain applying an ancient rule: pause before entering unknown territory. Comfort often feels like evidence that something is right. But comfort is not always a reliable guide. The brain can feel comfortable in situations that are simply familiar, not beneficial. Familiarity creates predictability, and predictability creates ease. Because of that, the mind sometimes treats comfort as proof of safety. Yet comfort can exist even in situations that limit growth or possibility. The brain is not judging whether something is optimal. It is judging whether something is known. This difference is important. When people expect new experiences to feel comfortable immediately, they misunderstand the process. New experiences rarely feel comfortable at first because they lack familiarity. Over time, as the brain gathers information, that unfamiliar experience can become comfortable too. Comfort, therefore, is not a signal of value, it is a signal of familiarity. Change introduces variables the brain cannot fully predict. When prediction drops, caution rises. This creates the sensation that change itself is risky, even when the change is positive. The mind is not reacting to the outcome. It is reacting to the uncertainty surrounding the outcome. Uncertainty forces the brain to prepare for multiple possibilities at once. Preparing for multiple possibilities requires more attention and more monitoring. That increased demand can feel like tension. The tension is not proof that something is wrong. It is proof that the brain is calculating. Every new situation requires this calculation phase. Once enough information is gathered, prediction improves and tension decreases. What initially felt risky can eventually feel ordinary, but before that shift happens, the mind stays alert. Alertness is simply the brain's way of staying prepared while it learns what to expect. Humans adapt to situations more quickly than they realize. Something that once felt unfamiliar can become routine with repeated exposure. This is not because the situation changed, it is because the brain changed its prediction. Adaptation is the process of updating internal models based on experience. Each time you encounter something new, your brain records what happened. Those records become reference points. With enough reference points, uncertainty decreases. As uncertainty decreases, resistance fades. Eventually, the situation that once felt difficult may feel completely normal. This transformation can seem surprising when noticed in hindsight, but it is actually a predictable pattern. The mind learns, adjusts, and stabilizes. Adaptation is not dramatic, it is gradual, and because it is gradual, people often overlook it while it is happening. Resistance does not mean you cannot move forward. It means your brain is still gathering information. It is a temporary state, not a permanent condition. When understood this way, resistance stops feeling like an obstacle and starts looking like a stage. The mind is simply moving through its evaluation process. Once enough information is collected, the resistance naturally decreases. This is why something that felt difficult yesterday can feel manageable today. The change did not occur because you forced it. It occurred because your brain learned. Learning reduces uncertainty, and reduced uncertainty reduces caution. Resistance, therefore, is not opposition. It is preparation. It is the brain getting ready before allowing movement. So when something feels difficult to start, it does not mean you are incapable. When something feels uncomfortable, it does not mean it is wrong. And when your mind hesitates, it does not mean it is against you. These experiences are signals, not verdicts. They show that your brain is doing what it was designed to do: observe, calculate, and protect. The mind is not trying to hold you back. It is trying to understand what lies ahead before it lets you move forward. Once it understands, resistance fades on its own. Not because you forced it to disappear, but because it no longer has a reason to stay. This is not advice. It is simply how the mind works. And when you see that clearly, hesitation stops looking like failure and starts looking like a natural step in the process of moving forward.